My dear brothers and sisters, one of the core concepts and the core aspects, themes in our deen, the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the concept of compassion and mercy. As a matter of fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala summarized the sending of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by mercy. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, that we haven't sent you except as a mercy to mankind. And that is why we find that not only the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, but all of the prophets of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, one of their defining characteristics was the characteristic of compassion and mercy. And as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would continually teach his companions to be merciful. As he told one man, he said, "Man la yarham, la yurham," that the one who doesn't show mercy or doesn't show compassion, that they will not be shown compassion to, meaning by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning if we seek the mercy of Allah, and we seek mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we are all in need of, then of course we have to be merciful to other people. But our religion doesn't stop there. Our religion just doesn't stop at mercy and compassion. It goes beyond that, and it teaches us to empathize. Not just to sympathize, but to empathize. And there is a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is to simply feel compassion towards another person or towards someone else. Sympathy is to feel mercy for someone, to be merciful towards others. Empathy is to put oneself in the position of another individual. Empathy is to put oneself in the shoes of another individual. And what that does is that it takes our compassion and mercy to a higher level. As the Prophet ﷺ, one of the hadith that many of us have memorized and we have heard over and over again, where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, none of you will truly believe, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه, that none of you will truly believe, that you won't truly attain belief until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. Is that sympathy? No. That is empathy. That is to say, I would want to treat another individual just like I would want to be treated. I want to behave with another person just like I want people to behave with me. And that really summarizes the issue of compassion and mercy in Islam. And that is why we just spent a month learning sympathy and empathy. Empathy meaning how do other people feel and how does that affect the way I deal with them. So it is one thing to see a person who is hungry and needy and to say, I feel bad for you. And because I feel bad for you, here I will want to help you. I will try and help you. I will try and feed you. It's another thing that we see a person who is hungry and starving and suffering, and then we try and recall how it felt for us to taste, no pun intended, taste just a little bit of how that felt. Maybe we recall within ourselves how it felt in the last hour of our day of fasting, the last hour of one of the days of Ramadan where we were hungry, where we felt like our stomachs are going to cave in, where we said to ourselves, just one bite of food, just one sip of water, just a piece of a date, any of that would mean the world to us right now. And we felt that sense of desperation. And so we look at that individual who has been hungry for who knows how long, who doesn't know where their food is going to come from. And we ignite within ourselves a little bit of how they are feeling. And of course, there's going to be a difference in how we treat that person. And that raises our level of compassion. That is what we mean by empathy. And my brothers and sisters, when I talk about empathy a lot of times, I know a lot of people when they hear that and they say, yeah, I can be empathetic. I can look at another individual and say, how would I feel if I was in that situation? And I'll take that at face value. And most people, when they make that claim, I believe them. But I believe that when they say that, they're talking about those people who they already feel some kinship with. Those people that they would already be merciful and compassionate towards, and then they can bring themselves to a level of empathy. Meaning a loved one or a close one, when we see them suffering, we want to help. And we can feel for them because we are connected to them. But my question today is, can we have empathy for those who we don't have a connection with? Can we have empathy for those who we don't relate to? Because yes, as human beings, it is easier to be good to people that we like. It is easier to be good to people that are close to us. And that's why if a loved one is suffering, if a loved one is having difficulty, then we'll be more likely to help them. But if we see a stranger, then we're obviously going to be less likely to help them. And that is where empathy comes into play. So empathizing with someone who, as I said, that we have no connection with, but to take it to another level. Empathizing with that person who has some animosity towards us. Empathizing with a person who has maybe hatred and anger towards us. And that's why one of the ways in which we justify, as I said, bad behavior towards others is by something known as otherization. And that is to look at an individual and to cancel out any sense of empathy. To say, this person, they are other than me. Or what is called dehumanization. Right? When we look at an individual and we say, they don't deserve my mercy and my compassion. They don't deserve to be treated in a way that normal human beings would have to be treated. And it seems like an alien idea. It seems like something that we would never take part in, but we do it all the time. I'll give you an example of something that may relate to you. When you're driving on the road and someone cuts you off, or someone drives in a way that you may think is erratic, what happens in your mind? Well, a lot of times we act out. A lot of times we have road rage, right? We get angry and upset. And we may act in a way that we normally don't act. And that is why a lot of times when kids, they see bad behavior from their parents, it may not be an everyday thing. It may be a situation that was triggered. So a lot of times kids, when they witness bad behavior from their parents, it may be in the car. So someone cuts off their parent on the road, and the parent, they act out. And in their mind, this is a justified behavior. Why? Because this person who's cut us off on the highway, the person who almost killed us, or the person who almost ran us off, or they're driving crazy, or they're driving too fast, they don't deserve our mercy. They don't deserve our compassion. They don't deserve for us to be patient towards them. And what are we doing here? We're practicing dehumanization. We're practicing the concept of otherization, because now there's a big disconnect between us and this person. And I remember, subhanAllah, I'll share a personal story with you. I was once driving in the car, and there was a car driving in front of me, and I was in the left lane, the fast lane. And if you don't know, this is a public service announcement, inshallah ta'ala. The left lane is a fast lane. If you're trying to drive slow, move to the right lane. All right? I was in the left lane, and one of my biggest pet peeves is the issue of the fast lane and the slow lane. I'm gonna look, because I travel, alhamdulillah, and other countries around the world, they don't seem to have this problem. Like, everyone understands that there's a fast lane and there's a slow lane, especially in Europe and so on and so forth. But it just seems that Americans have this issue where we don't understand the concept of a fast lane and a slow lane. So one of my pet peeves is somebody driving like exceedingly slow in like the left lane. So I was driving, and there's a car in front of me driving slow, and a friend of mine was sitting next to me, and he could see me getting visually agitated and annoyed and upset. I hadn't said anything yet, but my body language probably spoke to him. And he said, what's wrong? And I said, can you believe this? Like, this person, in the left lane, I can't believe people still do this. And he said, let me ask you a question. He said, I know you're feeling upset, and this is one of my mentors and someone that I look up to. He said, I know you're feeling upset and you're feeling annoyed right now, but how would you feel if you were to find out that it was your mother in that car in front of you? Maybe your mother, maybe a little bit elderly or older, right? How would you behave if you found out that was your mother and she was struggling to drive, and she was trying to figure out what's happening? And that, as soon as he said those words, it just brought a sense of calm over me. And I immediately backed off, and I wanted, not only was I not upset, I wanted to help the person. I wanted to guard that car from other cars. Why? Because it's my mom now, right? What is that? That is empathy. And if we just treated people in the way that we would want to be treated, it would drastically change the way we would drastically change our behavior. Right? How often do we see someone doing something that makes us upset, and we say to ourselves, what if I was in that situation? Or making excuses for someone, giving someone the benefit of the doubt. And one of the goals of the shaitan, by the way, is to block off giving people the benefit of the doubt. This concept of su'al dhan, right? Giving people, or thinking evil or bad of people. This goes against our morals as Muslims. That the default as a Muslim is that we give people the benefit of the doubt unless we're absolutely positive, we're sure that they intended something bad or evil for us. And also the concept of understanding that some people are simply ignorant. Some people are ignorant. Some people just don't know. And so someone comes and they behave with us in a way that we don't like. Well, one of the things that we remind ourselves of is that this person may just simply be ignorant. Right? Instead of otherizing the person, and the irony of otherizing people is that sometimes we end up treating people in a way in which we are blaming them for. So someone is racist towards us, or someone is Islamophobic towards us, right? And what does that do to us? Well, we get angry, we get upset, we have resentment that may be built up, and now we believe that it is okay to treat this person in a bad way because we have been treated in that way. And we resort to the same behavior that they are behaving in. And as a Muslim, we're supposed to be above that. We're supposed to understand that, yes, not to justify people's bad behavior, and obviously as a Muslim we stand for truth and for justice, and if someone is behaving wrong, then obviously we will stand for what is correct. But to turn around and treat a person in the way that they are treating us, well, that's simply not okay. And if we really want to bring about change, we really want to see people's behavior change, then simply treating them in a bad way because they're treating us in a bad way, that's not going to solve anything. And with all this negativity that we have right now, whether it be the political or the social climate, or whether it be, us as Muslims in America, and all the hostility and the negativity that we face almost on a daily basis, it's easy to become cynical. It's easy to lose hope in people and say, you know what, these people just hate us and that's it. And there may be people who just hate us. But how many people are there that don't hate us, and people who are simply ignorant? People who simply don't know difference. People who have this is all they have learned, this is all they have been exposed to 24 hours a day. And they say this person is acting in an ignorant way. They are being harsh towards me and so on and so forth. But in the end of the day, they are a human being. So can I find some humanity within them that I can connect with? And if that is possible, then perhaps change is possible. Perhaps I can have an effect on this person. But if we just take a whole group of people and say they are the enemy, they're on the other side, they have nothing to do with me, then how are we ever going to bring about change? How are we ever going to win the hearts of people? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, لَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَنْفَضُّ مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. That if you were harsh and hard-hearted, then the people would run away from you. And this is the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And if you look at all of our leaders of the past, starting with the prophets of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, and even other people, you always found that they had amazing character, the way they treated people. And even till today, if you want to look at our scholars and our teachers, one of the identifying factors of our scholars and our teachers, those who we should be taking knowledge from, is their character. Right? Yes, knowledge is important, and their training and their understanding of the deen and so on and so forth. But one of the most telling signs of an individual and their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is how they treat their fellow human beings. Not just their fellow human beings, but those who may oppose them. Do they have compassion and mercy to those who oppose them? Are they generous with those who oppose them? That is the sign of a person who has a true understanding of Islam. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وسيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I'm speaking about empathy today, and building a sense of empathy, starting with those people who are close to us, those people who we have a kinship with, And then those people who we don't have a connection with, but they don't oppose us. And going all the way to people who may oppose us, people who dislike us, to try and develop a sense of empathy with them. So I want to give you 4 things, inshallah ta'ala, that you can do. 4 things to build a sense of empathy, to try and develop empathy. Number 1, when it comes to building empathy, is to try and understand the individual. To try and take some perspective. Meaning, me as an individual, I have my truths, and I have my understanding, and I have what I believe to be right and wrong. But when we want to build empathy, we have to take a step back and look at the person and try and understand their truth. Not to agree with, like I said, developing empathy doesn't mean that you have to agree with the person's perspective, but it is to try and first recognize what their perspective is, what their truth is. Number 2, if we want to build empathy, then we have to stay out of judgment, at least in that initial phase, right? So someone behaves in a certain way, instead of jumping to judgment, because that's the easy way out, right? And judgment leads to anger, anger leads to resentment, and all of that leads to a barrier between us and this individual. So at least when we start off, number 1, we try and understand their perspective, try and understand their truth. Number 2, we stay out of judgment, at least in this. And this is not to say that there's no right and wrong, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying, don't judge anyone and so on and so forth, and that's the other extreme. I'm saying if we're trying to build empathy, in that process, at least in the beginning of that process, we have to stay out of judgment. Because as I said, judgment is the easy way out. Because judgment means having everyone play by our rules, right? And the reality is that every single person sitting here in this room today, we all have different life experiences. We've been through different things. We're affected by matters in different ways. Even 2 people who have been brought up in the same household, they have different perspectives, and that's the reality. And those of you who have siblings and so on and so forth, that sometimes you may disagree with a sibling. Why? Because their experiences, even though you've been brought up in the same household, their experiences may be different. Even SubhanAllah, there's studies on the firstborn child and the secondborn child and how their psychology differs. Because the experience as a firstborn child versus a secondborn child may differ, right? So judgment is saying, no, you have to play by my rules, right? This is my truth and this is my understanding, and because you don't fit it, you're wrong and you're bad and so on and so forth, and put them, dehumanize them, otherize them. But to stay out of judgment and say, look, this is who you are, and this is who your truth is, and this is why you are acting in this way. This is why you are behaving in this way, and this is not to, by the way, as I said, not to justify or to say, their behavior is okay. That's not what we're talking about today. We're saying to try and understand someone's behavior so we can try and empathize with them, so we can try and deal with them with mercy and compassion. And then number 3, recognizing what this person is feeling. Trying to understand what they are feeling. A lot of times when a person is in an argument with someone, we do this, right? We otherize the person, right? We say, you're wrong, and I don't agree with your perspective, and so on and so forth. And we fail to recognize what they're feeling, regardless of whether they're right or they're wrong. Sometimes in an argument, a person's sole reason for being in disagreement with us is because they feel hurt, right? And that's a feeling. There's no right and wrong when it comes to feelings. Right? You cannot force someone to change the way they feel. The person feels hurt, they're hurt. That's what it is. And so, number 4 is to try and find that feeling within ourselves. So if I'm having an argument with someone, and I say, look, I understand that this person has come to this place, and even though they're wrong, this is why they came to this conclusion, and so on and so forth. And how do they feel? They feel hurt. And even though I don't agree with it, how would I want to be treated if I felt hurt? Right? And at that point, when we are able to recognize that emotion within ourselves, then at that point our behavior with that person changes. And feelings, by the way, is a human connection. That is regardless of gender, regardless of age, regardless of race, regardless of religion, social status, doesn't matter. We can recognize feelings in other people because they are universal. That's a human thing. To say this person feels a certain way, and how would I want to be treated if I felt that way? So this is a 4-step process, inshallah ta'ala, that regardless of whether it may be your spouse, whether it may be your child, whether it may be a colleague, whether it be a friend, whoever it may be, or even an enemy, as I said. This can even work with somebody who views us as their enemy, and that is what can elevate our behavior when it comes to those who may oppose us. And I believe, inshallah ta'ala, that these coming years, this is a telling time for us as Muslims. That how did we behave when we were treated badly? When we were dealing with Islamophobia, did we resort to the same behavior that was expected from us? Or did we try and treat people the way they were treating us? Or did we treat people the way that we would want to be treated? And did we take the higher road? And glad tidings, and alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, that so far I believe we are passing the test. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That so far what we have seen from Muslims is that as we are faced with this Islamophobia and hatred and whatever it may be, more often than not we take the higher road. But it is in moments like this that we need to help one another. Right? We have to help one another with patience, right, upon the truth. And as I said, not only with our enemies, but also with those who are close to us and those who we find a kinship with as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to unite our hearts as believers. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us patience and allow us to be grateful servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu